Brock Purdy and San Francisco beat the Packers with one of the most exciting playoff games yet, moving on to the conference championship against the Detroit Lions. And while I truly believe this game will be dictated on establishing the ground attack for both of these teams, in today's video I'm going to dive deeper in how Purdy and San Francisco's offense can exploit the weakness of this Detroit defense. Starting out looking at the Lions stats for the year, on yards per attempt in the passing game, they're 31st in the league, giving up 7.8 yards an attempt. In total yardage, they're 29th, giving up nearly 4,600 yards through the air. In comparison, Detroit is much better on the ground, only giving up 3.7 yards per carry. That's good for number 3 in the NFL. In total yardage, they're at second, only giving up 1,509 yards, meaning Purdy, much like he did against the Packers, might have to go out there and win the game. But before we do dive into some weaknesses of the Detroit Lions passing attack, I thought it would be a good idea to examine the comeback Purdy orchestrated. After the game, I honestly thought the narrative would be Purdy finally has checked off all the requirements, a comeback win in a big time moment. But that wasn't the case, just more hate happened, which I honestly think is ridiculous. So let's go ahead and dive into this moment. Many people said Purdy wouldn't be able to overcome a fourth quarter comeback win in a playoff moment without Deebo Samuel. Starting out early on this drive, I thought Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy both did a nice job of going back to the basics. They hit a play action pass, something they've been successful on throughout the year. But what I really enjoyed is how Purdy didn't force it. Throughout this game, I thought Purdy missed at times, but on this drive, he was absolutely money. While San Francisco's players executed the game plan, I thought Kyle Shanahan did a nice job towards the end of this game re-establishing the run. Throughout this game, I thought he went away from it too much and didn't really establish it enough early on, but on the final drive when it counted, he decided, yeah, he's going to die on Christian McCaffrey and even Brock Purdy's legs. For me, I believe Kyle Shanahan really exhibited a level of growth by re-establishing his run game in the second half. But now moving back to Purdy, like I mentioned, he wasn't taking unnecessary risks on this drive. Rather, he was just playing efficient quarterback. Early on, it looks like Purdy is trying to go to George Kittle, but he decides once he's pressured from the defensive line to just dump it off to Christian McCaffrey. He also could have hit Brandon Ayuk on this play, but ultimately, this was a great decision by Brock Purdy to not try to force it to George Kittle and possibly have a tip ball, an interception, something go really bad on this final drive. It wasn't like Purdy didn't have to overcome adversity on this final drive though. Facing 2nd and 5, Purdy hit George Kittle for what would have been a first down, but he dropped the pass, meaning Purdy had to convert a 3rd and 5. But he did it with no issue, hitting Brandon Ayuk on a perfectly placed ball. I mean, this is like one of the best balls I've seen out of Purdy throughout the year. Like an inch higher or an inch lower, probably would have been an incompletion. And let's give our shout outs to Brandon Ayuk, who wasn't named to the Pro Bowl, despite making plays like this routinely. One of the most common criticisms you'll hear about Brock Purdy is he just doesn't throw it deep. But I don't know where this comes from, because often I just see him looking for the deep man and then coming back to his check down if needed. But on this play, Chris Conley, a backup wide receiver, is running open. Brock Purdy doesn't hesitate and lays it directly on him. What was really impressive to me about this play is how Brock Purdy was able to hit Chris Conley as soon as he's coming out of his break essentially, despite them not having that many reps together. After this play on the field, I thought Purdy missed a wide open Brandon Ayuk, but when you watch where Purdy is with his eyes, he was looking towards the bottom of the screen, so he never sees Ayuk coming open and finds the right check down man here. And I can't really blame him because I don't know how Kyle Shanahan designed this progression on this play. And as he moved down the field, Shanahan didn't forget about his MVP back. He kept riding CMC to the end, and it worked. He had short passes designed for him as well as runs. Now, let's talk about risk taking for a quarterback. Often, I would say I wouldn't want my franchise quarterback outside of the pocket, putting his shoulder down, trying to get a touchdown or a first down. But here, I actually agree with Purdy's decision to try to pick up the most yardage possible, because it is the final game possibly of their season if they don't win. But luckily for San Francisco, CMC does appear built for the playoffs, and he was able to punch San Francisco's ticket to the conference championship. For me, while many were quick to criticize Purdy, I believe he showed what you want in a franchise quarterback, one with the ability to come back in less than ideal circumstances. When you think about this, Purdy had to adjust on the fly in this game with the loss of Deebo Samuel, as well to overcome his own adversity. But when the moment mattered most, Purdy was ice in the playoff game. He had the it factor to get it done. But with that being said, Purdy now has to face a Lions defense that was much more leaky on the pass throughout the year than the run. And in recent weeks, I believe San Francisco has gotten some indicators how to attack this team via the air. Starting out, not moving too far away from home, I believe San Francisco can be successful against this Lions team via play action pass, especially if they're able to establish CMC on the ground. Starting out, looking at this wildcard matchup between the Lions and Rams, I thought this was a play San Francisco can implement in their game plan, especially since it's something they've already been doing at a high level throughout this year. It's a concept they absolutely love. You'll see Puka Nacua coming over on the deep over or dig route, really whatever you want to call this route, but they're trying to attack the middle of the field, and they're able to successfully get it to Puka. And you can see how the DB as well as the linebackers are being drawn upwards because of the play action allows the completion to Nacua. The Lions are very aggressive against the run, and I think that's why they're one of the best teams at stopping it. But that also means they're susceptible to plays like this. And while it just seems like a simple dump-off pass to the tight end, if you get into a player's hands like George Kittle rather than Otton on this play, who knows, he might break a couple of these tackles and go for 40. Overall, when I was watching the Lions against play action, I would see guys running open, and it was up to the quarterback to either dump it off to the open man or find the deep man. In addition to that, I'm going to speak about how the Lions struggled against screens in the short game, but they also struggled against them in play action. Here, for instance, the running back is able to fake and then get a massive gain on this screen play. One of the best plays for the Rams, though, in my opinion, was how they set up this screen pass to Puka Nacua. I mean, they had similar plays like that crosser I showed, and here they're able to hit Nacua on this screen, and he just does the rest. Now moving over to the short game, let's focus on those screen passes I was talking about. As I alluded to earlier, the Lions' biggest strength, as well as possibly weakness, is how aggressive they are. Here, the corner comes on the blitz as well as linebacker, they don't notice it's a screen, and well, they pay for it. Once again, Puka Nacua does his thing in open space, and while it's not a massive gain, I think these are the plays San Francisco should look to mix in, especially if Deebo Samuel is healthy. If Purdy is able to remain efficient like I've showed you in this video on his final drive and just find the open man with great timing and anticipation he's shown on the year, I think San Francisco should be successful, much like the Buccaneers here when they hit Rachaad White on this pass. Or even when you're watching a play like this, Matthew Stafford is releasing this as soon as Puka Nacua is coming out of his break. And while this might be a tight coverage throw, I believe Purdy, like I showed you in that drive on that pass to Brandon Ayuk, will be able to make similar throws against the Lions. One area in which Purdy must be successful in the short game is being efficient when under pressure. The Lions are a team that will bring blitz, and this is going to allow San Francisco to have one-on-one matchups. In this case, Puka Nacua is one-on-one, running a drag route. Matthew Stafford is able to find him, and like we've seen throughout this video, the Lions aren't the best team at bringing down open ball carriers. When you're looking at the Lions' passing attack, they're not particularly good at any area on the field, so let's go ahead and look at the medium game, the 10 to 15 yard area. The best area I think you can attack this Lions team in this area is the middle of the field. Their backers aren't necessarily like San Francisco. They'll leave guys open like they did here for Puka Nacua. Once again here, if you watch this Buccaneers game, they're susceptible to a seam pass to number 10, and I think with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and even Juwan Jennings, Shanahan must be thinking of ways to attack the middle of the field against the Detroit Lions. But even when you watch other plays from the Lions, they simply aren't the best team at guarding wide receivers. They run a lot of man coverage, and if you have wide receivers like San Francisco does that can beat this man coverage, it might be a long day for the Lions. Perhaps the biggest area in which the Lions show weaknesses though in their passing defense is the deep attack. Specifically over the last few weeks, the Lions have shown they're not good at containing simple streak patterns. Here for instance, with them running zone coverage, Mike Evans is able to get open, but it's not too much better even when they're running man. On this play, once again going back to Mike Evans on the simple streak pattern, the corner isn't able to do much better in man coverage for instance. So for me, I really wouldn't mind seeing Brandon Ayuk running streak patterns, or who even knows, Chris Conley has a crazy fast 40-yard time and he might burn this Lions defense. Outside of running straight down the field though, I believe San Francisco can utilize double moves as well as hesitation moves from their wide receiver routes to really trick this Lions defense. Here, looking back to the wild card matchup between the Rams, you can see how Puka Nacua on the bottom of the screen uses a hesitation move to drive the DB up enough. And as soon as Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua see this DB flat-footed, they blow past him for a major gain. And throughout the year, I think the chemistry between Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk on these type of routes might spell disaster for this Lions defense. Brandon Ayuk isn't the only player that can get involved deep in this game though. The Lions just haven't been the greatest team at covering tight ends either. Here you can see how Auden gets deep on a tight end will. No one's even covering him. You do this to Kittle, like I mentioned earlier, your defense might just be giving up a touchdown rather than just like a 25-yard gain. One of the biggest things in this matchup will definitely be how San Francisco's aggressive style in the quarterback play of Brock Purdy will match up with the aggressive style of the Lions defense. And they're aggressive all over the board. Here you can see how they try to jump this route on a deep pass from Matthew Stafford, and it results in a touchdown. If Purdy is able to exploit the aggressive style of these DBs, he might be able to do just enough to move on to the Super Bowl. With that being said, one area in which San Francisco and Purdy must be careful in the passing attack is turning the ball over. If they turn over like Mayfield did a couple times in this most recent game, they might lose the game. While I believe primarily San Francisco should be looking to establish their running attack early in this game, the fact is it's going to be difficult going against one of the best rush defenses in the league. And Purdy may once again have to be a key reason for San Francisco's success. I'd also like to say sorry for getting this video out a little bit later than usual. I tried to make it with a lost voice, but it sounded terrible and I didn't want to put you guys through that. So I'm going to really try to be pushing throughout these next few days to get out my normal amount of content. Anyways, as always, these are just my thoughts and I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. And it really means a ton to me for the continued success. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And hopefully San Francisco comes away with another playoff win.